it's time for us to learn how to read contents from a JSON file. So far, we've been able to create content and dump it into a file to be able to view it. So let's just quickly check this again. In my output tester, I have this list 2, 6, 12 of integers. Awesome. And I can output it. But how do we read this content back into our program from a file? Let's learn the fundamentals, and then we'll test out some of the more intermediate to advanced examples for our context right now. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up I guess we have an output tester.json reading file as file. Awesome. And now we are going to pull the data, and we're going to use our JSON tool to load the contents of this file. So I want to use the JSON tool because it kind of knows how to recognize the contents, and will make an attempt to deserialize the context of the content into the proper format in the output. And so now we have this data that we've received from this file, and let's just go ahead and print out the data in our console and see what we get printing out here. 2, 6, 12. Awesome. It looks okay. Let's check this a little bit further. Let's print the type of our data that we've received to see what it says for this. A list. A list. That looks like what we have. But here's the thing. You might not quite believe me. I mean, always test this yourself, of course. So let's be a little bit extra thorough and making sure that this is actually working properly. So we've written these contents to a file, and I want to make sure I'm not just accidentally reading what's in my program right now. So what I'm actually going to do for a moment is I'm going to turn off the functionality to write content again. So I just have this information saved, and I'm going to make some adjustments. I'm going to say 2, 7, and 16. Just change the contents of this file. So 5, 7, 16 from the 2 that was there before. And now, when I run this, 5, 7, 16. 2, 6, 12, 5, 7, 16. The contents differentiate because I have not overwritten my edits with the internal program contents. Notice the 5, 7, 16 doesn't show up anywhere in my program. It's being read from the persistent JSON file, proving that we've actually done that. Now, I will note one thing. If I re-enable this writing protocol, notice it's back to 2612. How come? Well, when we write the file, we're actually overwriting the whole thing. So when I make edits now, make a big number here, and I go back, if I run this again while I'm still writing the existing contents in the program, it's going to overwrite my changes. So just be aware of that. If you're testing things and you notice that things don't seem to be persisting in your changes, it's probably because you're just overriding them again and again with a write. So be mindful of that. Let's just check a different piece of content here. Let's change this into a dictionary. Let's say I have a high score and I have a 520. That's the points for the high score of this particular scenario. Notice high score is read in from the file that's created, and it's in a dictionary format, not a list format. So notice the JSON tool, when it loads in the contents, has loaded in the proper data format. It's been able to kind of cast this data, tell Python the right type of data to hold based on the context of the contents that it's loading. And it can do that because it has context of what type of information it is by the syntax of the JSON file, which is kind of one of the main purposes of using it in the first place. Excellent. So now we've been able to see that we're able to pull some kind of basic data types in, lists and dictionaries, and you can experiment with other kind of fundamental data types if you like. But what I want to spend the rest of our lesson's time on is reading in objects, because we have to do a little bit more work to be able to read objects in, and it's something that you'll likely be using with a little bit more depth in your work to come. So up above here in my content that I'm scrolling back up to here, I have, let's just kind of compress this a little bit so we can see a little bit more clearly. Let's say I have my student variable, and quick side note, I forgot. I actually added one more piece of content to this to be able to show you a context that I didn't get around to in the previous video. So we'll start there, actually. I've added an ability to add some course scores. I've separated the logic out from the constructor because I don't want it to be required. Remember, anything in here is required to build the student, but setting courses, the scores for them, is optional. And I can do that after instantiation. I can then run the method to set the courses and add them in. So let's just see if I actually write this student object, I can see that I have course scores now saved as well in their own sublist. I think I didn't do that. Did I do the last video? I don't remember this point. Anyway, if I did, this is a review. If I didn't, now you see this being added. And I want to do this because there's one extra layer of the reading that we need to worry about for that. So we have this new, maybe new, feature. And I've added it in here, and I can dump all that content together in string format into our file. And so we've written this successfully. I'll get back to this in a moment if you've noticed this new piece of information here. But I want to scroll back down to the opening of the data. Right now, in my output tester, I have stored an object that exists, but what I've done to achieve it is I've added this new little section of code here to be able to format things as a dictionary type, to be able to turn this object format into something JSON serializable. That's kind of the process of conversion. So that means that on this end, I have an object of contents, but on this end, I have a dictionary of contents. So it's not the exact same format. So there has to be some kind of a translation, or another term for that is the serialization process between them, which I have to coordinate a little bit more. So just to show you here, trying to open these contents, loading this in, we're going to see what data appears and the type that it reports. And I'll see that it does pull the data back into the program. And just to be extra thorough, let's change a couple things. Let's call this Yolanda. Let's say political science. And let's change this from a 2.3 to a 9.0, an incredible, impossible score. And we'll run this again. Oh, I overwrote it because I wrote it again. So I made the error I just warned you about before. So I'm going to disable some of this writing to override my contents. Let's change this again really quick. Yolanda, political science, and 9.0. Whoa. 9.0. And now when we read it in, I have this updated information. I didn't override. But notice, it's a dictionary class. It's not a student class. And to show you even more clearly, when I instantiate the student up here, if I print out, print the type of student here, it's going to tell me it's a student class type. That's what that is inside the program. But now that I've pulled it from the JSON file, it's a dictionary type. That's not exactly what I want, because I want this to be able to be converted back into an exact student type object so that later on I can actually use that object again in the same way I left it. Because kind of the thing we're trying to get here is the state of things in our program. We want to save them here, and then when we load them, they're back in the same state we left them. I don't want it to be in a different state. I want it to be right back where we started, in a way, once I reload the program. So there's something else that we have to do to be able to do this little conversion. And so let's just see here about making a bit of a utility file to be able to kind of manage this. So where should I start here? I need to make a function. I'm going to call this dict to student. I'm going to pass in the information in dictionary string format, and I want to translate the dictionary format to student format. So I need to kind of manage that kind of translation piece myself for this particular type of object. So I need to create a new student object. And to make a new student, I need to pass in the parameters to create it. But instead of making a new name like Jose, I can pull the name from the data I retrieve from the file. And in the dictionary, I have a name as the key connected to the value that's stored inside of it. So I can get the the index of name will return the value. So the name of my student will be the value connected to name inside the database. So that will pull this content in for name. Good. I can do the same thing for age. Good. I can do the same thing for major. So now I have the ability to instantiate a new student from the data I pull from the file. That's kind of what I'm getting at here. But I don't want the student just to live inside of this method. I want to return the student object back so that I can kind of work with it down here in the program. So here's what I'm going to do now below. I'm going to take this data and I am going to say a new student, or a loaded student maybe, equals dict to student, this method I ran from the data that I gained. So I am going to load the student as an object, and then let's see what the result is when I run this. And I have an issue because I don't have, in line 14 here, oh, you know what? I'm changing my mind, and how while I'm doing this tutorial, I want to get rid of that little printout for a sec. Don't even worry about it right now. Let's get rid of it for now. It was a placeholder for something I was going to explore, but we've gone a different route. No problem. Just deleting it. And back to here, we load the file's contents, and then we convert it to a loaded student. And let's see. It's going to tell us the object reference here, but it's going to tell us that we have a student type. That's the type of the loaded student. Awesome. That's really great. And boy, I'm changing my mind one more time. We're pulling this back. The one issue was that we hadn't, what I've built here, sorry for my rambling, something that I've actually avoided in some of my videos is sometimes I make errors, and I'll just go back and restart recording just to make the video cleaner and crisper. But in this video, I'm kind of stumbling around a little bit as I change my mind. That's what coding is like. You kind of make mistakes. You kind of change your mind about things, maybe change a strategy, and then you just kind of troubleshoot it and keep on going. So I'm just going to kind of revert back to my original idea without restarting the video here. And this is kind of normal. Don't worry about it if you're like this. The whole purpose of this is when I print out an object, this method, string, is going to print out some of the contents of the object to check if it's actually containing all the values I expect it to. The one problem is I haven't actually populated the scores from what I pulled in the data yet, so this was not actually initialized yet. So the last thing I actually need to do here when I have my dict to student is remember that I also still have to have the student have some course scores be populated. How do I get that in this context? Well, the data has them right here. Okay, it has them stored in here. And so I need to actually get the course scores field from in here so I can get access to that array. So I'm going to get this, a different way of grabbing the data if you want to use that. And this should pull the course scores and populate it a little bit better so that now, instead of an error, I get the full printout. So I should just really finish that. So this is still a helpful tool. Without this, I couldn't actually see this printed out in all of this detail to see the evidence of it being loaded in. Hopefully you can follow with that. So another essential thing to note here is that the type of loaded student is now a student class. So running this little converter logic allows me to make, it's not just the data in a dictionary file format. It's now converted back into a student object, allowing me to continue using that object in the program persistently like I did before. And just to be extra thorough, let's head in here and we instantiate our student and we are writing it out. Oh, we did the writing here already. So what if we go into here and one last time check for a different age, just to see if things are changing. Age 35. So we've confirmed that we successfully pulled this content in from the file and not from what's running in our program right now. Okay, Lots of great stuff. So what we've seen in this video here is that we are able to read contents from a file, from a JSON file, and using the JSON library, load the contents in, and it will interpret the format and assign it properly to a variable. That will work for basic data types, but if we have an object, it's going to load it in as a dictionary, meaning that we have to do a little bit of our own conversion back into the object format and then return that to gain access to the actual object itself back in the program. And that should enable us to work with any given type of data that we need to and successfully read contents from a file. In the next one, we'll deal with multiple entries in a file for writing and reading, just to advance our understanding a little bit more.